Okay, let's do it.
وخصوصا لما تكون مرأة بطول.
Et en même temps, si la femme est dépolitisée, elle dépolitise pas.
Picture a curious 7-year-old boy holding a Super 8 camera running around his house. He looks into his camera and he sees the future. A background of almost 11 successful movies broadcasted and talked about all over the world. That is the fate of your one and only Christopher Nolan, the renowned British director. Hello everyone, this is Sam's Reviews 4 Behind the Mic, along with Wasim, who's behind the sound. We are so excited today to open our first episode under the name of Christopher Nolan Edition. Yes, we are preparing for the release of the newest movie by Nolan, Oppenheimer, in July by dedicating the coming episodes to his movies. So make sure to keep an ear for his favorite movies as we dive into his world. Poppin' pills. We're back again to talk about our edition today. Of course, we can never start a journey without introducing the man behind it all, even though in our case, we can totally flip the notions in respects to the man himself. That's why we're going to go backwards and discuss movies from his most recent to his first. Which brings us to the star of this edition, Oppenheimer. I think everyone lost their minds as they saw the trailer and the cast. It was like the reunion of the big guns in the industry. Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, you get it. Plus, the resurgence of many other actors. And to see Cillian Murphy as the lead after his role in Peaky Blinders, it was like freaking finally. I have so much respect for Cillian and his craftsmanship. I mean, a look at the poster alone tells you how much dedication was put into the role. To get closer to the man who was considered as one of the deadliest men out there, and kind of the first to do an apology speech on TV. Shout out to all of those famous apology videos. But jokes aside, Cillian took over the role of the man responsible for thousands of deaths and years of damage, J. Robert Oppenheimer, Mr. Atomic Bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki himself. I believe that the choice of the character was not spontaneous. Cillian has always chosen complex characters to portray. Just look at Thomas Shelby, a family man, kind, generous one, but who's not afraid to get his hands dirty. I remember the church orphanage scene where he burst in all angry and vengeful because the church was mistreating children. On the other side though, you've got this murderous man who would send a little mafia gang to deal with his enemies, anything to be on top. Yet, we love him and understand him. And so, for him to choose Oppenheimer as his next character, that really shows his interest in dualistic characters. Actually, gray area characters I would call them. Oppenheimer is known for his speech, where he shows remorse for killing many people. And yet, in the same speech, you see how this was all done for his country, to stop a war only to create a mass destruction weapon. That is one excellent example of complexity and paradox. And Nolan is all about that. Now, how do you notice elements that are very peculiar to Nolan is first the complexity. I mean, to choose a topic like this for a man that is considered evil by some is one controversial topic. He's also dived into the archives in order to bring out the story of a dead man who caused a lot of death. We've seen that also with the movie Dunkirk, that talks about the Battle of Dunkirk and its role in saving so many lives from the Nazi attack. Nolan got his inspiration from the archives and built this whole movie around it. Yeah, Cillian was there too, by the way. But you understand what I mean. Nolan has this thing for bringing complex subjects that are forgotten and not researched well enough, and he makes them blockbusters. To take on such a challenge is something that I and thousands of others are waiting for. It's going to be explosive, quite literally. Since this is the tale of the atomic bomb, you can bet that there will be many scenes that have explosions, fire, and physics. Nolan is also known for his interest in physics, even though he's an English literary student, and that can be a non-possible relationship, but he makes it work. Let's go beyond Oppenheimer and think of Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet. No one can deny how revolutionary Inception was. Not only was the cast bomb, but the concept in itself was new and captivating. A dream within a dream. How badass can you get more than that? My brain was what in the after watching that movie. Plus, the cinematography and technology used to deliver the creation scenes or fighting scenes, out of this world. And don't forget the graceful hands of Hans Zimmer. Just a shout out to this man who creates wonderful masterpieces that complement the action and feelings in these movies. Inception was about time also, and I feel like that was like a trial for the coming movies because it opened a debate around space and the notion of time. 4 years later, Interstellar was out. This movie about space and astronomy, it was purely sci-fi. But it's always the plot twist with Nolan and the bridges that he builds to connect all elements together. I mean, spoiler, but if you're here, you better expect some. That final scene of Anthony McConaughey hitting the wall to get his daughter's attention because he's stuck in another dimension and he's contacting her through Morse code that was actually foreshadowed from the beginning, and Hans Zimmer's score, First Step. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Again, the link of time in this movie. But Tenet takes it beyond. Tenet for me was like meta version of Inception. Inception was child play compared to this movie. This movie was time. Yo, I have to watch it one more time or more because I can't understand all the physics involved. And that's time after all, you know? It's all about equations, probabilities, scenarios, and that was the movie. We'll dive more into the technicalities in the coming episodes, but I have to share that this movie had to grow on me. What kept me watching was the plot and the acting. Plus there were Robert Pattinson and Aaron Taylor-Johnson. That's enough to get a girl going, huh? But by the end, I was quite happy with the movie. It kept me thinking, and it had an important message. I will share that with you on the Tenet episode. It's a shame that the time of the release was not very good. 2020? Yeah, dark times. Speaking of darkness, let's not forget that Nolan took on the legacy of the knight himself, Batman. This trilogy, if you ask anyone, is highly regarded in the superhero world. And what made it stand out was the storytelling. I think the topic of Batman in the previous movies was taken as either an aesthetic idea or an action figure. But to make a story around this guy who lives a dilemma, that was the beauty of it. Again, big appreciation to the actor Christian Bale who managed to bring the complexity of the superhero. But Nolan's directing and script writing highlighted the question of Batman. Is he a villain? Is he a vigilante? Or is he simply a man who seeks justice? And for that, the Dark Knight series will always be put on the list of classics on all levels. Please don't hate me for jumping this series now, but I am saving them for our next episodes, so we could have a good talk about the magic of these movies, brought to you by the excellent acting of Christian Bale. Now, speaking of Bale, don't forget that Bale before that year met another superhero under the context of magic, and that was in 2006, The Prestige. This is a movie based on the novel by another Christopher Priest, published in 1995. It is the same story as the novel, where Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, compete against each other as magicians in the 19th century. I personally love this movie because it had all the elements that I love. Magicians, Victorian aesthetics, and cunning. Plus, the plot twist was quite spectacular. Now, if we want to step further back in the past to 2002, we can talk about Insomnia. This movie that has Al Pacino, Robin Williams, rest in peace, and Hilary Swank can be considered as a basic story in terms of Nolan filmography. Thing is about this one is that it was a good psychological thriller of some sorts. It asked good existential questions about the human nature. Like, for the longest time, you don't understand who's the bad guy in this one. Then you slowly get to the truth. It keeps you going, wanting to reveal the mystery. I will say, however, that time here was not very prominent. There were flashbacks, sure, but not the usual time manipulation that Nolan is characterized by, especially after the movie Memento that was released 2 years before it. Now, this movie really delivered, and I would like to comment on the idea that seems like the blueprint of Tenet and all of his movies, truly. I mean, for reals, this movie had me going in loops because that was how it was. You just never know when is the ending and when is the beginning. But I loved every bit of it. The actor who plays the main character, Guy Pearce, has his own charm, because this role required lots of ignorance, and for someone to transmit that feeling in different ways, it's wonderful. Now we almost reached the end of our episode, and we're finishing it off with his debut movie, Following. You can sense the Nolan touch in this one, even though it is one of his shortest movies. And I find it very intriguing that his first movie is about a writer who delves into various notions of humankind. People should give it a go, since it's like the appetizer to his menu of movies. But keep in mind that this movie is in black and white and totally British, and obviously with a twist. There you have it, folks, a whole journey through the film background of one of the best directors out there. We hope that you've enjoyed our episode. We would like to know your opinion on Christopher Nolan or his movies. Perhaps share with us your fave work by him. You can also suggest some topics for our coming episodes. We'd really appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more pop culture themes. This is Poppin' Pills, and we're off.